What is going on, everybody? My name is Oz. I'm here with the rest of the cast for the Omi-Cast with the awesome deities and the ever so classy Devmon. We're going to start off things again, just explaining a little bit about the Omi-Cast and what we hope to accomplish. We are one of the newest podcasts for Awesomenauts, and we plan on bringing this community together and just kind of increasing community activity at the same time. Get some names out there, recap anything Awesomenauts within the community, and ensure that we bring some quality entertainment to you. Without further ado, we'll go straight into the introductions. My name is Oz. I am a Ted Clunk main, and I am on Team Ape along with Deities, and I am just here for the time being. Nada, who couldn't be here, Nada or Nada, depending on where you live and pronounce the names. He is unfortunately not here this week because he is on a trip to Italy to find the newfound maps of 2.9 or something along the lines of that.
But he's looking for pasta.
Lucky guy. Anyway, my name's Deities. I'm also a member of Team Ape, and I'm pretty much an Awesomenauts addict. So if you don't see me playing Awesomenauts, something's wrong. I am a Swiggins and Coco main, and I'm just here to have fun.
Jeez, well, we'll talk about a lot about Coco later on. And I'm Devmon, as mentioned before, and I am a Swiggins and Genji main, although I play a lot of different characters just to kind of get a wide selection. I'm part of Team Slam West, which is currently inactive and doing more Slam Jam remixes, more or less. But that's the team I'm part of. So, anyways, I know these guys are ready to talk, and I am too, so I'm going to start it off with a bit of introduction to matchmaking. So matchmaking is basically something that affects everyone. So when you get a match, when you're looking for a match, you're looking to use matchmaking. So currently in the game, you've got your own matchmaking and how it works right now. With just last Friday, I believe it was, on the 13th, Friday the 13th, Juice actually did a stream, and he was showing off the new matchmaking. So before we begin with the new matchmaking, I'd like to explain kind of the old matchmaking. So old matchmaking, or matchmaking of current, is kind of like that. So basically, you join, as soon as you hit that button, you're looking for those game lobbies. If there isn't a game lobby up that fits you, you'll create one. So you have all these game lobbies being constantly created. So you basically get sorted out through that. However, there's a lot of issues with this. So sometimes you won't be able to find a game based on your own league or based on your own region. So I'm up in Canada, and my league's usually League 2. So I actually have a hard time finding people using the nearby and or same region setting. So with this change that's coming up with the new matchmaking server, so that's going to be the one of the things that's going to be changed with that. In addition, it should also eliminate a lot of lag issues that people have. So Awesomenauts is an online game, competitive game, and lag is a factor. It's something you can kind of account for and try to fight, but nobody likes fighting lag anyways. So the new matchmaking system is going to be set up to actually kind of combat that. So, to move on to that, Deities, if you'd like to explain the new matchmaking system and the server that runs it, that'd be awesome.
Totally. So, this past Friday, Friday the 13th, which is supposedly a unlucky day, we actually got some great news that the Happy Matchmaking server will go live sometime in spring or summer 2015, I believe. And Joust pretty much explained how the old matchmaking worked, which Dev touched on a little bit about. And it's that we are running on Steam servers where everyone is queuing up into the Steam servers, and it's basically matching on a first come first serve basis of ±1 league. And this doesn't work because many people are in regions where not a lot of players are, and plus Awesomenauts, while it has an amazing community and player base, it might not be the biggest player base out there for MMOs and stuff like that. Or MOBAs rather. And that is where the Happy Matchmaking server comes into play. The Happy Matchmaking server, while it is not a dedicated server to play on, so the game will still be peer-to-peer connection, it allows people to queue up when just starting the game. So you start up, you're in your lobby, and you're already searching for a match. This allows you to find quicker games, and here's the most important and amazing part, is that it will match you with people in your region. This pretty much allows you to play with people in the same region, so less ping, and more quality packets. So your ping will probably be anywhere under 150 or so. And the other best part about this is that while there is a longer wait period as you just queue into a game, whatever it is, the Happy Matchmaking server doesn't come on a first come first serve basis. You get about 50 people in the queue, and all those are ran with a formula per se. I don't know how it works. I wish I did. It'll be amazingly fun to find out the inner workings of Awesomenauts. But anyway, the Happy Matchmaking server apparently runs a formula to pinpoint the best teams that can play against each other. You'll get someone from League 1 facing League 2, another League 1, and it mixes and matches these teams to create fun and full games. One of the things I want to talk about, which I'll stop talking and let the other guys speak, is that this will get a lot more pre-mades fighting against each other. Pre-mades will be set to fight other duos and pre-mades. And I think that's amazing. That's going to be so much fun. Don't you think, Oz?
If I could interject, I think that is going to be awesome because it's basically going to be putting the, I don't want to say better pre-mades against each other, but it's going to be putting pre-mades against each other to the point where skill is going to be almost on par with who you're being matched against, which is awesome because when you think about it, obviously a lot of people don't like the way the current matchmaking system is set out. As far as a pre-made can go into a queue and be queued up with 3 solo queue players who have never had any experience playing with each other and obviously don't have voice communication depending on where they are. And putting a pre-made against those 3 solo queue players who may be in various leagues as opposed to those 3 solo queue players, the 3 pre-made players, excuse me, being put into League 1 or League 2s, whatever league they may be in, being put against solo queues in various leagues may not have the same fun or same competitive edge as being put against 3v3 League 1 pre-made or 3v3 League 2, so on and so forth. So that being said, region settings are also going to be eliminated from matchmaking. So remember those times where you would fight a 350 ping Scoldier and get thrown across the map when he's on bottom lane and you're on top lane? Those days are no more, people. So you should be happy about that. It's going to be a different type of matchmaking. Obviously, the Happy Matchmaking server is going to put people against each other who have a good peer-to-peer connection. Obviously, peer-to-peer is not a server. Server connections are those that are a centralized server, which is going to be used now for Awesomenauts. But this is going to be put into the peer-to-peer aspect of this person has the best connection with this person. So depending on where they're located, excluding where their location is, they're going to be matched up with each other. I think that's pretty much it. That's all I have to say about the region settings being taken apart.
No more lag, Mighty Throat.
Oh my goodness, it's gonna be so good.
No more piggy bank Scoldiers mighty throwing you in the first 10 seconds of the game. That is true.
Oh jeez, and it's gonna solve a lot of that. I feel like one of the hidden things that's not mentioned about having the 3 versus 3 in a separate queue, sort of a separate queue, is that you get more competitive games that way. So one, or basically solo queue, is going to introduce a system where you have a better opportunity to fight like basically 5 other people, whereas the 3v3 you introduce kind of like 2 teams, so you're going to have better practice against more competent opponents that are working together more often, more or less. At least I think
true.
that is.
No, that's totally true. It's just going to be another state, another level of the game where more people are going to get into the competitive scene, whether they like it or not. It's also funny that once you queue up and you actually confirm the match, you cannot leave, which is a little bit of an interesting topic, but I feel that would prevent some people from ruining the games once they're already in there. They have to commit.
It leaves a level of, obviously, commitment to the game, but it also prevents people from ruining the game from other players. You know, I've been browsing the forums and I've been reading upon some people saying that there should be a penalty for rage quitters and people who leave. To some extent, I do agree with that, but I do have some things against that. I mean, sometimes I have to leave a queue due to a family situation, so on and so forth, but there are also times when I have a Yuri on my team who's going 0-12 and decided to not pick up mines, and I'm more or less a little bit confused as to what's going on. In my opinion, that's a little bit of a waste of time to me. I'll stick it out, but you know what? If I have 4 turrets down, the other team isn't pushing, and they're just prolonging the match, there's no reason for me to stay in that match. That's the point where I kind of say to myself, okay, you know what? I am going to be letting my team down, but for the first 25 minutes of this match, this Yuri hasn't really been doing this, or this character hasn't been doing this. So I would decide that I would want to leave that match. Obviously, there are a lot of factors that are going to play into the new matchmaking system and queue system, but from a lot of these forum posts I'm reading, a lot of people want a timeout timer to be put into knots, that if you leave X amount of games, this is the time that you have to wait. I like that idea, but it just comes down to people can extend the game as long as they want.
Well,
if
that is
the other
true.
team isn't pushing in, though.
That is true, though. For the family of emergencies, I do believe that there is an option to leave where you close the game. You just can't leave to the point where you just don't want to play into that game, and so you try to join a different game. So for family emergencies, you just close out the game, you go do your stuff, you won't take a penalty. But in-game leavers, although aside a feeding Yuri is very devastating to your team, I feel that I am one of the people that would maybe possibly do a timeout or a forced rejoin option as a punishment, even though I don't want a feeding Yuri on my team and I would rather have someone else. It's either him or a bot. I wouldn't want someone else to come in and take his place. A lot of other games do this, I believe.
If I could just bring it back to that, the only thing with the timeout timer is, considering the amount of players playing knots at any given time, it may be difficult for the community to accept that as a whole.
True.
I mean, there's a lot of pros and cons to it. On the other hand, you look at the pros to it. Okay, it prevents people from hindering another player's experience. You can obviously prevent someone from making another person's gameplay terrible, which is a good thing because you're not going to make people rage that way. Then you have to look at the cons to it. With the amount of people actually playing Awesome Knots at any given time, there may not be a person who's going to be able to rejoin in that match. I like the idea that you mentioned of a forced reconnect to finish that match, and I think that can definitely be put in a way that can benefit it, but it could also just hinder that person's gameplay again, because if a leaver or rage quitter is coming back into the same match that they just rage quit, are they really going to play? That's my whole thing with it. They're kind of just going to stand there and say, okay, I'm here because I don't want to wait 10 to whatever or X amount of minutes to play my next Awesome Knots match. So I'm going to stand here, not do anything, just attack the droid so my idle timer doesn't go off, and pretend that I'm actually playing.
Or be a slave to the turret and just run face first into it.
Oh, jeez.
True, but then you can also report that person for intentional feeding.
Very true. Anyway, on another topic about matchmaking server, while we still are on this topic, I want to quickly mention something super interesting, and I'll leave it as a segue and a little bit of a cliffhanger, is that Joust mentioned prediction entering the game. Now, for anyone that knows what a peer-to-peer or a peer-to-server connection is to a game, seeing how this game is peer-to-peer, it's very interesting to imagine how prediction would work. Now, prediction, it takes into account the lag or the response time between a player and a player or a player and a server, and it visualizes anything graphically on one side of the account to match that ping. And that's kind of a complex thing to say. But say someone is 300 ping and we have a bullet right here. For someone, that bullet is here, but for the 300 ping, it's already right here. It moved aside because he already shot, but the server or the person who's receiving the input hasn't received it yet because they're so laggy. Now, prediction will jump ahead and graphically put that bullet over here based on the amount of ping that a player has. While this is awesome, and it was introduced in a couple of first-person shooter games that I know of called leading shots, it's very interesting because it is not actually affecting the physical hit of a bullet, it's just affecting the graphical view of where the bullet is. So one thing I wanted to see in Awesome Knots was that if a person is 300 ping and they're right here, technically we know or we see them right here, but they should be here. If one can predict that in your mind and hit this spot instead of this spot, they should take damage. But that's a player-to-server connection and not a peer-to-peer. But we'll see how prediction works out. It's an amazing thing, and maybe we'll talk about it in the next episode. It's very complex since I'm mumbling, jumble, whatever stuff and everything. But let's move on to droid changes. This topic was introduced by Nikki, and the droid changes were 2.7, I believe, but Devmon will fill you guys in and give you more information on that.
If I could
thank
just
you very
interject before you do that, Dr. I, or whatever you're going with there. If I could interject, we do check the forums regularly for topics of discussion, and we do take topics of discussion. Obviously, Didi's mentioned it before, but this one was from Nikki, who suggested on the forums. We do have another 2 forum topics, I believe, that we have set up for you guys after this. But be sure, if you want us to discuss something, put it on the forums, send it to the email. The email is the Omi-Cast@gmail.com. Fan art, whatever you may have, send it to that, post it on the forums, and we'll look at it. Take it away, Cyborg. We'll just go with that.
So anyways, the 2.7 droid changes were pretty interesting and pretty amazing, actually. Changed up the game quite a bit, so thank you very much for Nikki for actually suggesting that. It's actually going to be really interesting to talk about. So what happened back in 2.7 was all the droids got a little bit of a revamp. So before, when they approached the turret, they would have a turret shield, but now that they have 2.7 out, they no longer get that little turret shield. It's now gone. So if you knock them back, they won't regenerate that health. So it makes it easier for the defending team to basically keep them back and not have them constantly push. At the same time, the droids, when they're pushing the tower, they won't get that extra health. So killing them at the tower is a lot easier, and killing them right before the tower or the tower range is not as much of a big deal. So it's a lot easier to defend in that sense. To compensate for that, though, Ronimo introduced a little bit of a movement speed buff to those droids, so those droids have an easier time walking up to the turrets. They'll be able to get those strikes in, no problem, in most cases. But I mean, again, it's easier to defend and clear them out. And in addition to compensate for that change as well, a lot of knots actually had their damage upgrades changed to basically be knots only. So key examples would be like Leon, where his auto attacks basically don't really do extra damage to droids outside of backstabs, extra backstab damage, and then Clover of Honor's extra second shot basically damage. So you have not having restricted upgrades in terms of doing damage to basically droids. Another key example would be, say, again, Leon and Frog. They have the Splash Dash and Spike Tongue upgrades. So Leon has an upgrade that increases his damage against knots and droids, and he's got another upgrade that's 50 solars, like a little bit cheaper, but it only damages awesome knots. So you get to see this polarization effect towards that. I think the same thing happened with Yuri with his uranium mines, and as soon as that happened, you saw them basically get a lot less usage. So through all these changes, it's been easier for certain characters to defend against turrets, whereas some characters have had a harder time. In general, most auto attacks will do extra damage or do the full damage against droids, but abilities will have reduced damage. So if you look at Scree, he used to do extra damage against droids with his saw blade damage upgrades, but not so much anymore. But he still has the damage upgrade potential with his Lashes of the Goddess on his auto attack. So there's still ways to fight droids, even as every single character, but some characters had their pushing power reduced significantly just because the droids don't take the full damage from their abilities and their normal damage upgrades. So if anybody'd like to interject right now, just kind of talk about that.
Those Super Olympic running flying droids, those were fun.
Oh, the silver coating flying droids?
Yep.
That's what they're called now? Because
silver coating
they
flying
have the
droids.
speed of crackheads. They just sprint across the map as fast as
Oh,
possible
God.
and do as much damage as humanly possible.
They do the damage of like 4 droids, I believe, but I'm just exaggerating. But they do a lot of damage if you don't notice them right away. But one thing about the droids that I find, or rather the characters' pushing power, the ones that got affected were the characters that had 2 damage upgrades on a single skill, and that pretty much polarized one skill to be a pushing and the other one to be a awesome knot only damage, where you can still get both and do the full damage on awesome knots, but only one of them affects droids. For Yuri, I believe that he's still very successful at clearing droids. He can place a mine down and kill the whole thing, and either the turret finishes them off or his laser will end them really quick and he'll just move on to the next set. But for awesome knots like Leon, I feel like his pushing power got very, not nerfed, but changed in a way that his game style changed, where now he doesn't do as much turret damage and he doesn't do as much droid damage, but he is an assassin. He does a lot of damage to awesome knots. So I feel like that droid change, as well as the shields being removed and everything, it was a step in the right direction where games I wouldn't say are moving faster or slower or anything like that, but you see Awesome Nuts now developing either a pushing sense or a brawler or gank style builds. So that's very interesting when talking about like comps and everything like that. But Oz, do you have anything to say about the droid changes?
I definitely do. The question that Nikki wanted us to discuss was whether or not we feel that the removal of the shield extended or shortened games. And I think, in my opinion, that it has shortened games to a point. One thing that people don't realize is that they can stall the droids from reaching the turret if you do this little poke technique, which I always do with Scree. You walk in front of the droids. Exactly. You walk in front of the droids, you stall them out, have them do their attack animation, jump up, and jump right in front of them again. And if you time it correctly, you won't be able to take damage, and the droids will be able to just stay in place. A lot of characters can do this. Actually, I'm pretty sure every single character can do this if you time it the correct way. You won't be able to take damage, and you will be able to actually attack the droids and have your turret doing damage on the droids as well.
Is that worth it,
that has
though?
legs, that is.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Dev?
Every character that has legs, to be exact.
Exactly. I mean, with Clunk and Derpl, it's a little bit more difficult because they're slow characters. We'll get to Derpl a little bit later, though. But
Yeah, but is that worth it to jump around? And obviously that's a technique for not getting hit while clearing droids, but is the speed at which that droid wave is cleared being affected by these changes? Since you can jump around and clear a droid, but you're going to waste about, like, what, 4 to 5 seconds clearing that while you could be in a fight somewhere else?
It's something you did before the patch, though.
But I still do it, and I know it's a great way for me to clear droids. Half the time you'll see me whenever Deities and I are pre-mating with our partner Mavij, they'll be off fighting, and they'll just see me on the bottom lane doing droid clears, and they'll just kind of ask, what are you doing? And I'll say, oh, I gotta clear these droids. I don't think you understand how much damage these 2 droids are gonna do running this fast. So it's definitely something that I always wind up clearing. I always do that technique. I just jump in front of the droids, stop the clear, especially with Scree. Scree's AA. Come on. His crowd control and clearing abilities are ridiculous. Totally. He's got the saw. You just launch the saw out, jump in front a few times, stall him from even going anywhere, and you've cleared the lane before you know it.
Now that you mention it, I'm pretty horrible at early game farming just because I play characters that, well, they have a great starting auto tech, but they take so long to clear. So I usually either take 5 seconds to clear a droid wave and then move into a battle, or I do a couple of hits, use my skills and abilities to clear it, but then I'm out of cooldowns. So it's this polarizing factor where do I take the time to clear, or do I go into the fight and initiate and try to get a kill instead?
Well, that goes back to what you were saying with more of the kind of set skills or set character designations to certain positions. Obviously, certain characters are better at clearing than other characters. You know, Swiggins is more of a pusher and aggressor as opposed to a clearer. So I can see where you're coming from and saying that sometimes your early game farm is a little bit off, but you compare that to a Ted farm or a Spike and Vinny farm at any point during the game, it's completely surpassing a Swiggins farm.
Without a doubt. But one of the characters, I think Dev might talk about this a little more, Leon. I believe he was so overpowered in a way because he can do everything, where a lot of characters can still do everything. They're well-rounded in every sense of the word, but Leon became more of an assassin instead of a clearer, which I think now if you check the leaderboards, there's only like 2 maybe Leon mains in the top 100 spots. So
you know, it's such a big difference just because Leon being able to push, especially a late game when you have both cores exposed. I used to have that huge damage that he'd do against the cores and whatnot, but nowadays he can't threaten as much. So there have been lots of characters that have basically risen and fallen with these changes. A few that everybody wants to talk about, and some that we didn't talk about last time with the 2.9 changes and the beta. So I'd like to introduce a couple different characters. Basically that were considered a little bit too powerful and are currently considered a bit too powerful, which I agree with. So we have our wonderful ladies, Coco and Penny, both powerful knots right now, both doing full auto attack damage to turrets, full damage against droids, besides the couple damage upgrades. Again, that makes us pretty sad. They were seen a lot in the tournaments too. Right, Oz? I think
They
that was
were basically seen in either one of the bans or picks in every single match. It was arguably one of the most interesting spreadsheets that I've looked at in a while. You can see either a Coco or Penny pick in majority of the matches being selected, and I'm pretty sure we've only seen maybe one Derpl and one Ayla throughout the entirety of the tournament as far as
We are talking about the Alienware Awesome Cup tournament, just in case anyone was wondering.
Regardless, I mean, we've played plenty of Cocos and plenty of Pennies, and even in a high caliber game style, if you have a pre-made against a very good Penny, chances are that Penny is going to tear you to shreds. Same thing goes with a Coco. And my huge thing with Coco is her movement speed is just absolutely ridiculous with silver coating. She can do an immense amount of damage, especially once you get the static gloves and the shock gloves. You can run such a variety of different builds with Coco that in any build that you go, you're going to be extremely powerful. It's not set to one specific thing. You can go AA. The amount of damage that Coco has on a turret with her AA is ludicrous. The speed that she can get from silver coating, doing a sickening amount of damage, and get out of there virtually unscathed, that is ridiculous. Combine that with slow upon her blaze escape. That is so many different aspects coming into the game here. You have an aggressor and a harasser and someone who can easily escape. It goes back to what you guys were saying earlier with Leon. You have that invisibility. Leon is obviously an assassin. Coco has so many different titles that I can equate to her. She has the assassin build. She has the aggressor build. She has an initiator build. She has all of these attacking styles. She can even play defensive. Her clearing is absolutely ridiculous. The 400 base ball on the droids, that's half of it down already early game. Then you get the static gloves and clear that really quickly. The droids are moving too fast, blaze them a little bit, allow the turret to grab some damage, and just take them down. I don't want to get into Penny because Penny is just, man.
She is so
Penny is Penny.
Blows my mind at how versatile she is as well. And there are a few amazing Penny players out there that we should really give shout outs to. Minnick, Seltzy, Pepper Fox. Those are the three off the top of my head that I can immediately say right now. If you find them in a solo queue, you're going to have a bad time. Those are one of those situations where if you find them in a solo queue, you should really evaluate your choices in the next 10 minutes of that match. Because that match could be over in 10 minutes, or you can extend that match to make it late game, at which point they're going to be extremely overpowered.
The one thing I wanted to, I guess, question and hand the question over to you guys is, why is Coco Ball so feared and so said to be overpowered? Since we have a baseball at 400 damage, where other characters have that max upgraded damage for, I'm a Swiggins main, so I obviously have to bring it up, 450 damage as an upgraded hook. So that difference of damage where the ball can be upgraded to 670 damage on basically the same cooldown plus a base area of effect with a, I would say, huge radius. Why is it that other characters seem that their skills are okay while the Coco Ball seems overpowered? And I think Dev is just like itching to say something right now.
Right, I was going to say that Coco Ball, just as base, it has so much utility. Basically, it's a really good harassing tool. So even if you don't hit, you get people to be forced out of the way. So like, oh, I'm going to dodge the ball. That's fine. I put you in a position where you want to be then. In addition, the base damage is really good. Cools down is really good. Speed is good. I don't think those are an issue. In fact, it's AoE, not an issue. It also has base knockback, which is also something to consider. So in addition to having base slow with Blaze, she's got this base knockback. So she's doing fairly decent damage. I mean, Blaze is kind of weak, but you get stacking it multiple times to get that maximum damage going on. And you let the ball just kind of a nice little burst. So it's very reliable, very safe, and that plays into the fact that Coco doesn't have too many weaknesses. So she's this fast character with very good access to very powerful upgrades. So stack gloves are really quite insane with the power that they gave her and the range.
If
Totally.
I could just interject,
Yeah,
one thing that I want to make a remark on is that you asked why characters fear it and why a lot of people fear the Coco Ball. It's unpredictable. You never know what's going to happen with it. My whole thing is, a lot of these characters, or I should say a few characters, Clunk and Derpl, to give an example, they have a warning where their explode's going to be and the radius of the nuke. My whole thing is, the Coco Ball, you don't know the actual radius of it. And when you have to put lag into that equation, it's extremely difficult to judge where a Coco Ball is going to explode or the amount of damage that it's going to do. Obviously, you can look at the upgrades and see how much damage it's going to do, but when you're taking into account lag against a Coco player, or a Penny player for that matter, with the Pulse, which we'll speak on in a few minutes, but the ball itself has this unpredictable explosion radius. Whereas we see a Clunk explode radius, we see the Derpl nuke explode radius. If I could make one change to Coco, it would be to show the ball explode radius. That would make my experience a lot easier in knowing that, okay, the ball radius is this is what I'm seeing. Obviously, when you equate lag into it, it could change, and it may lag behind a little bit, but you have a general idea of what the radius is. Half the time that I'm playing laggy Cocos, or for some odd reason I'm lagging, the ball is not even close to me, yet it hits me every single time. And whenever that happens, I'll just shake my head and just say to myself, why me? Why did it have to be me?
Because you're a Derpl player.
Yeah. Because I'm a Derpl player now, apparently. But
you're such
this
a big
ball
target
that is so tiny, that passed me by about 4 or 5 pixels, that shouldn't hit me. Why is it doing that?
Well, that kind of brings it up. Are Coco and Penny lag abusable characters? So if the matchmaking server comes online, which I'm just hoping and waiting till the day comes, will we see a less abusive Coco and Penny where we can actually dodge the ball? Strictly speaking about, like, say, LAN connection parties, if ever. But
one thing that I do want to say before you continue, I don't want to say it's lag abusive. I want to say that obviously the attack goes to the aggressor. So the way they see it, it's not lag abusive at all. But to the person on the receiving end of it, they may see it as lag abuse, which kind of brushes upon other topics which I don't really like to engage upon. But my whole thing is scold ears that are 450 ping that choose to get flaming fists and just piggy bank into flaming fists.
It's a wall of fists.
I don't understand. To me, it's like, come on, man, you didn't have to do it, but you did, so I'll have to work around it.
Well, yeah. But going back to Coco, let's talk about Penny a little bit, since they're pretty much the same characters. I find myself doing the same tactics to beat a Coco and Penny, no matter who's playing them, and it works well. But Penny has these base abilities that are so versatile, so unique, and very easy to not only hit, but be safe with. We find that Penny has her dash, which I do believe there is a mini stun on it. Someone can correct me on this.
Yep, there absolutely is.
And it's refillable with charges and has an incredibly short cooldown, and it can be upgraded to a -2 seconds on cooldown, even less.
That's correct.
And that blows my mind. But I believe that Pulse is what a lot of players see makes Penny a little bit overpowered, or one of the top tier characters. I should probably stop saying overpowered, since she is balanced, she is killable. Just in a very coordinated team, it's incredibly hard, and she's always a threat. But Pulse, what is it, 400 on base, upgraded to 704, or 704 with Starstorm?
704 with Starstorm.
With Starstorm.
Yeah, what is it, 640 on regular?
640 max without Starstorm, correct.
Okay, and that has a decent range. It can be upgraded with another upgrade to increase the range, and that pierces, so it's no clip through walls, and hits multiple targets, and has a base amp, which I'm not following the 2.9 beta, but are they reducing the base amp?
They're changing the amp. So how the amp works right now, it goes 5, 10, 15, 20 per charge that you have. They're changing it up so it's 10 consistently across the board. So basically, instead of having that 20% amp when you have the full damage going off, you have that 10% amp no matter how many charges you have. And I almost feel like it should be like an inverse system, like I think it was Kirby Derby or somebody else suggested, where you'd start with a stronger CC and you'd have to get inverse, whereas you get more increased damage, so there's a trade-off with the charges. So there's that. Is there anything else you wanted to say, Deities, before I interrupted you there?
Well, no, I'm trying to figure out a way how to talk about Coco and Penny in terms of how to make it relatable to every other gamer out there that's listening. We can talk about the skills or what makes them unique or makes them top tier characters, but I feel like to make it more relatable, when I play Coco, I find myself it's pretty easy to play Coco. I find myself always finding unique spots to hit the ball in certain locations where the player won't see the ball coming or will barely have any reaction time to dodge the ball. But what gets me killed is being overly aggressive without support from my team. I find myself going into the match, getting or trying to get that last kill, last hit, but if I can't get out or if I don't have the support from my team, it's harder than you would think to get out with a Coco or a Penny if they don't have cooldowns or charges. So I feel that much like how Voltar was, Coco and Penny rely on their team. The only difference is Voltar was tanky and heavy character specific, where he did great with like Derpl and Ted and everything. But Coco and Penny, their synergy with almost every other knot is amazing. Like, how and what can you do to that?
You were saying that, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you were saying that, what it takes for Coco and Penny to be top tier characters. There's also a level of skill that is put into this. You can be good with any particular knot. Learning Penny and Coco, I would say, is a difficult feat to accomplish. And when you master that, you're going to be in that top tier of players.
Totally. Dev, I think you had something to say?
I do. So the similarities between Penny and Coco as well, I like to point out that they're fast, mobile, hard-hitting characters with few weaknesses. So I mean, every character is going to be weak to CC and they have a lower HP pool. But in general, they are very flexible, they are very strong at what they do, and you can basically take them into any team and they work well with any situation, any knot. And they're basically a guaranteed safe pick no matter what you do, which is exactly why you saw them in the tournament so much. They bring a lot of power to the table, they give you a lot of dynamics, they can be built multiple ways, and they're very hard to catch.
But how do you kill them?
How do you kill them? I Swiggins main, so I've been just trying to hook them down. And I mean, a lot of people are calling Swiggins a little bit too strong at the moment because of his burst damage and everything. I think part of that stems to the fact that he's such a good counter with the anchor just to hold them down as much as possible. He basically says, no, you're staying there, you're not going to use your mobility to get away, I'm going to get my teammates to beat up on you while I have a nice little barroom brawl. Look,
That
it's an anchor.
is
Yeah.
how you stop a Coco and a Swiggins. You stop them with that crazy
You stop a Swiggins
thing.
with a Swiggins.
You stop a Swiggins with a Swiggins. You
Stop a
combat
Penny with
Cocos and
Swiggins.
Pennies with this anchor.
But definitely, I think CC is something that cripples Cocos and Pennies in a way. What else? Clunk
Mid
bite.
control. Having mid control stops
Yeah,
them.
true.
To a degree, I would
Holding
say,
the-
like, more Penny than Coco, because Coco can harass from a distance. Penny has a harder time. If you can keep Penny zoned away from main sources where she can get charges, that's where she becomes a little bit more weak. Coco has a little bit more flexibility in that sense.
Definitely,
Sure,
Coco can just poke away at mid no matter what it is. I believe Serona is the best spot for it. You just use the bouncer,
Oh, yeah.
send the ball, and just wait for the annoyance or the rage to come through on the chat. It's very fun to do.
But you also have to take into account where you are into relation of your team whenever fighting a Penny and a Coco. If you're going mano-a-mano with a Penny and a Coco, and you're an early game Lone Star, you may have a bad time. You can use your dynamite, try to maneuver around them, but one whole thing that you need to remember is that they're such versatile characters. They can play the aggressor role, they can play the defensive role, they can play the initiator role, so you really need to make sure your team is around to fight with you. That being said, we should get into a mid recap. Actually, one tactic that I do want to let you guys know that I've been testing over time is when fighting Cocos, if you can stay above them, they're going to have a difficult time trying to keep you down. Maintaining that altitude above a Coco, especially if they don't have static gloves, you're going to get a lot more damage in as opposed to staying on the ground and fighting with them. But that's just with Coco being Coco. With Penny, if you try to stay above a Penny, you're going to have a bad time. You're going to get pounced into a turret, more or less.
Just gonna
That
fly.
being said, let's get right into our mid recap. We should really have a little jingle when we go into the mid recap now.
Yay!
No, like we just do. We have a little jingle that says like the mid recap or something like that. Anyway.
Give us a voice, Dev.
Yeah, give us a voice, Dev. Oh, okay, there you go. There's our mid recap. There you go.
It's time to recap on what we discussed.
There's our mid recap jingle. But
Take
our
it
mid
away,
recap.
guys.
So we did discuss matchmaking. We discussed the future matchmaking coming out hopefully by summer, if not the after points of summer. We then went into Nikki's subject from the forums, where he wanted us to discuss the 2.7 droid changes and how they impacted the speed of games and how games were played. And then we finally moved into the wonderful discussion that was suggested by Ant for the Coco and Penny. This discussion from Ant was asking us to discuss our top and bottom characters in our opinion, or I should say the more powerful and lesser powerful characters, not the top and bottom, because any character or any player can be good with any character and considered the top. So, that being said, we are going to go into our opinions of the least or lesser powerful knots. These are all opinions. Nothing is set in stone. Nothing has been said. These are just our opinions from us three on who we believe to be the lesser powerful knots. Take it away, Dev.
Okay, before I begin, I want to say that all the knots that I believe are in the game right now are more balanced than they were before. So you have Voltar. Voltar is actually not doing so hot right now, but I believe he's been better than he has before. He doesn't have as much healing power as he used to, but he tries. He does lots of damage now. He uses solar crab burgers to keep himself through a fight. It's all pretty nice. But he doesn't have that heal that he had before. He doesn't have that heal that was devastating with the sentries, the Teds, pushing those towers down with Derpl. It's not the same anymore. I'm sorry. It's not the same. You don't have any Voltar Islands around anymore. They're like, get to the heal bot. No. It's like, hey enemies, you're getting my heal bot. It's gonna hurt you. So you have a lot of Voltars nowadays, they just do damage, and there's not so much healing going around because they nerfed the healing quite significantly. With the 2.9 beta changes, they're buffing his heals slightly, but the most important thing to consider is that he's actually getting a bit of a rework to compensate for basically all the issues he's had since release. In addition to Voltar, I would also like to mention Derpl, who's been kind of on the side. He's had some issues. If you build into auto attacks or auto cats, you don't have that turret damage or the nuke damage. If you build into nukes or turret, you don't have cat damage. So he's one way or the other. He's a little bit schizophrenic in that sense. So basically, he's also gained some changes to basically reduce his prices all around the board. But I'm hoping in the future that he gets his cats tied to his turret. So if you build into cat damage, you're going to get that siege mode damage as well. And there's more incentive to use siege mode as well as some sort of, I don't know, something to help out with siege mode, because you are very vulnerable because you're so stationary. So it'd be nice to get some sort of additional mobility. Somebody suggested some tracks where you can move left and right. Somebody suggested some rocket fuels where you can jump up a couple times to avoid a couple things. And then people have been talking about Saw Blade and Time Rift, how they've been so devastating to him. So I'd like to see from you, deities, what do you think?
I definitely agree with Derpl being one of the harder characters to play at the moment, and I would say that it's because when you build a Derpl, and I do believe Oz plays Derpl, so he'll get into it when he goes in, just to explain, or please feel free to interrupt me whenever. Derpl is very committed to what style of play he chooses from the very beginning of the match. He can build into auto cats, his auto attack, or his siege mode, or snares, for which I don't really see, but he can build into snares for team mid-control and team fights and stuff like that. The thing is, when he switches his builds midway without completing one of his tactics, like full cats or full nuke or whatever, he's at a point where he can't do anything. It seems like because he switches tactics to continue the game into a different stage, he gets this mini mid-game nerf kind of thing where he falls back no matter how much solar he has, because he basically has to rebuild from scratch. Now, what is the problem with that? We can definitely say that making a character only build one thing is problematic, but it's not even that. It can be very successful. It's the fact that so many characters have counters for a certain specific Derpl build. We have characters like Scree, Coco, anyone with a stationary, easy to hit target, like on a siege mode Derpl. And that cripples his mobility when he's in siege mode, so he can't use the turret bullets, and he is pretty much a nuke and run character, where he goes into siege mode, does a huge burst, but then has to get out because 1, he has no cats to fight, 2, if there's anyone that counters him, he took a lot of damage, so he just has to go back and heal. And I'm not really a Derpl player, but how would you say his clearing is, Oz? Just quick thing.
I'm doing a drawing real quick. Continue with what you're doing. I'll be back with you in a second.
That drawing better be good.
No, the drawing is good. The drawing is good. Trust me. It goes back to Devmon's Voltar.
Voices.
Oh boy.
Voltar voice. But you guys are saying that Derpl is a weak character. I do not agree in the slightest. I agree in the aspect that you're saying he's a very specific character in what you have to build, which I do agree with. You can either go with the cats, or you can go your snare traps, which are actually very good if you decide to play a support Derpl, but you have virtually no damage output besides your siege mode. You can then go into the siege mode, where you can build into the damage, which is immense in the beginning. It's a sickening amount of damage, especially paired with a pre-2.7 Voltar. It's just a sick amount of damage that you're going to get on a turret.
Yeah, very true. So going back to my other character picks, I know Derpl is well thought about being one of the harder characters to play, but Ayla is one of those knots where I don't feel she's the lower knots, but it seems like no matter how well you play her, it's going to be a hard time for you, no matter who you're fighting. And while this isn't problematic, the fact that you can find a good Ayla player and they won't have a problem in a match, they won't be underpowered, they'll do fine, it's just so hard to get to that level. And is it really worth having a character at that point where it takes that much skill just to be average or a little bit above average? So what makes Ayla a little bit on the lower side of the list? I would say that Rage is one thing, where it's not hard to keep up with a target, but it's very influential of what your target does. Vertical movement is a null factor on Ayla, where she cannot move up or down easily. So if you juke using a jumper, it's easy to get away. If you're one of the flying characters, it's easy to get away.
Oh, so you're Vinny.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Vinny's. It's one of those things where you just have to practice and be good with Rage. But then we have knockback skills. Ted Shotgun with knockback.
Ted Shotgun is the most amazing thing against a Rage Ayla. If you are ever playing a Ted and see an Ayla who's just building pure Rage, please, the first upgrade you get, please get knockback. It will make the game so much easier. If you've ever seen an Ayla fly across your screen so fast, it is the most satisfying thing to experience in Awesome. Exactly. See, exactly. Dev just did a little kind of diagram where he tossed the little rage bubble to the side of the screen. That's exactly what Ted Shotgun does to an Ayla.
It's hilarious. I remember one match, I was fighting in mid, or I think it was Ribbit, top lane, just right in the middle, and then for some reason, Ted, Oz, as we were part of the team, is fighting an Ayla, and he just shoots her across the screen with a shotgun. She flies past the mid-fight that me and, like, Anna are having and goes to their side of the turret. I'm just like, okay, what the hell just happened there? But whatever, and I continue my fight. It's hilarious to watch. But that's one of the reasons why Ayla's harder to play against certain characters. The other part is that I feel she's not as committed as Derpl, but she is committed. You can't go half build into Rage and then be successful with it, or as successful as a full Rage build or a full Evil Eye build, or even the rarer case of the occasional auto attack AA Ayla, which I find extremely fun, but we'll see how it goes. One thing about auto attack Ayla is in 2.9 beta, I do believe they're giving her auto attack a base lifesteal. And what is it? I think it's 10% with a possible 20% upgrade on the previous lifesteal skill. And that will give Ayla's more versatility of 1, base auto attack, and 2, more reason to go into auto attack, since I find it a very fun build to do. And Rage is getting an overhaul, I guess, a little bit, where her rage now does a set amount of damage. It can be upgraded, but it's the damage taken to yourself is based on your total life. So upgrading your health bar will not reduce or make you live longer. It'll still upgrade and scale in terms of how much health you have and how much damage you take for yourself. And apparently for some of the beta players, that makes it harder to clear or a little bit, or you have less sustain while in rage mode. So I find Ayla to be one of those characters where you don't really know what she is. Is she a pusher? Is she an assassin? Is she a chaser? Or is she a support?
She's a clear, in my opinion.
Clear?
She's a clear, in my opinion. So I finally finished my drawing of our weakest characters. So there's a Voltar.
Who's Voltar? Yeah.
Who's Voltar Schwarzenegger. I probably spelt that wrong, but you can see the shotgun, you can see the V, you can see the glasses. He's dealing with it. He's making you deal with it. If you could say that for me, Dev.
Get on the heal bot. It's actually backwards for me, so I mean,
it says get to the turret now.
Ow, get to the turret now.
And there's Ayla, who's just being knocked back by
she looks like a little hamster.
She is a little hamster. She's tiny.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Going back to my opinion on the weakest characters, Ayla, she is just a weak character in my opinion. She's a great early game character and a great character to learn if you're new to the Awesomenauts scene, but you do have to take into account the level of playstyle which she brings into the game. She's a very, I don't want to say noob-friendly character, but for an early player to learn Ayla, it's a lot easier than, let's say, learning Raylan. Because Raylan...
I would not disagree.
Really? You think Raylan's easier to learn than Ayla?
I think so, because Ayla, she does the self-damage. If you're not careful about managing your health, you will get yourself killed, and more so inside the beta. Because if you're not careful about hitting your targets and following your targets, you won't be able to stick to them, and you will kill yourself.
You should have said no.
Yeah, no.
Which we should speak about Naw's changes.
Nah.
But, my next weakest character would be Yuri, in my opinion. Yuri is more of a situational character, and I understand that. In the wrong hands, Yuri is a devastating power that he's just a force to be reckoned with. Especially on maps like Ribbit and Augion, where you can mine up those bumpers, mine up the jungle, and hold mid-control for the whole game. If you see a Yuri Derpl on Ribbit, just try your hardest to stay out of mid. Hold the battles in your jungle, hold the battles in their jungle. Don't go through that mid-jungle area. If you do decide to go through there, and if you're playing with sounds, make sure you listen out for those mines, because they will eat your HP. They will tear them apart. 3 mines is enough to kill any character at 550 damage each, or most characters, I should say. The exclusions being the more tanky characters, Clunk, Swiggins, Derpl, especially Derpl and Siege. But Yuri, in my opinion, he just doesn't have the damage output of other Nauts, and doesn't have the sheer level of team play that other Nauts can bring to the table. Go, Dev, take it away.
I would say he does have a level of team play, because his bubble is great for ganks and everything. It's hard to pull off, though, and in addition, Yuri suffers from a bit of... I don't know, he's got an issue where if you build into mines, you can have a hard time with laser. Laser and mines don't really synergize that well, because if you're putting down the mine, you're losing your time to laser, and laser you have to stand there, be dedicated, and shoot the people with laser beam constantly. So there's a little bit of a desync right there. So
I do agree with you to some aspect, but I just want to point out, once that time bubble runs out, you really don't have much to bring to the table.
No, you got mines.
Yuri has a very specific kind of AA, where if he's not moving, it increases in damage over time, but a lot of characters have the displacement that can reset his AA. So if you're running in, this has happened a few times whenever we were playing Team Boss, and we would see, I believe it was Kirby who was playing Yuri. He would go in, start the engage with the time bubble and fast forward. They'd land the face mine off and get a sick amount of damage off, but after that, all their cooldowns are wasted. All their cooldowns are off. Yuri doesn't have the time bubble. He doesn't have a quick escape with flash forward. So he, like I said before, he's very situational. There are not many times where you can have a Yuri running in and continuing to be an overpowering powerhouse, as opposed to the times where you can have a Clunk who's running the cooldown on his exploding every 8 seconds, healing up with the bite in between.
That
In
is
addition
true.
to that, I would say that Clunk's got a little bit more pressure than Yuri. So you can learn the area of mines just has that area denial. But Clunk, if he bursts and uses Explode, he's still got missiles to follow up with. And even if he does build all burst, you get the fat Pete's going on with the salvo and you're doing all this wonderful burst damage, you can still attack with missiles while moving, so you're not just stopping, you're continuing the chase and do damage and lots of damage with them.
I do believe one of the suggestions of reworking Yuri was allowing his laser to be fired while moving, giving him a 50% speed reduction and like a 25% damage reduction on his laser, or something along the lines.
I think it was just the speed reduction. And
my
the
own thing with that
was,
is you see a lot of people doing that now with flash forward. And they'll hunt you down with a Yuri with Hubble and extended range.
Correct me if I'm wrong, you can't laser while moving even if you have flash forward, right?
You can,
yeah, actually
but those
you can, but it's a glitch.
2 or 3 seconds of hits that you're getting in is basically evening out to being able to move while lasering, especially with flash forward. So I mean, it's a bit redundant in my opinion, but I can see how that would be used to kind of play Yuri a little bit differently. My whole thing is, we've always seen Yuri with this type of AA. Why change it now?
Yeah, totally. If it works and it's functioning, then why break it and try to rework it? But Yuri, much like Genji and Voltar, is a support character, where Voltar is the borderline of support and, oddly enough, a sniper gank massive exploding style character.
He's using his muscles to kill people. He throws the droids with his psychic muscles. He kills them really good. He supports by killing everything else, so you can push the tower by yourself.
Yeah, a support because of killing. That's interesting. But I would definitely say that Yuri, his mines are great for clearing, also great for face mining, and they're functioning. There's not really anything to do about them, and it's not what's making him one of the lower used characters. It's the fact that in solo queue, he is hard, and in team play, where teams against teams, it's a very competitive scene, it's also still hard to play him. So it's more so the choice that, while Oz does believe he's one of the lower class characters, I think it's just he's underplayed because there are better options. Situational, there we go. I agree with that.
But in most situations, he's useless. Yeah, that's.
I wouldn't say useless. I faced dangerous Yuris.
He's less useful than I would say a Coco or a Penny. That's just my opinion. I don't know about you. I would take a Coco over a Yuri any day. That's just my opinion.
But that's just Coco, eh?
That is Coco. But Yuri, the one thing I did want to talk about him is that for Bubble, there are some mandatory upgrades, like Flash Forward and personal favorite, just heal on self and heal on teammates. It makes him support in a way that is restricted to being around his team. You could have a Yuri clear and then just drop down for a face mine or something like that and support his team after a team fight. But that would pretty much demand that his 2 teammates are able to gank and kill without him. He's just there for the cleanup, the heals and support, and everything like that. So, I don't know. There's a lot of opinions going around about what's the top characters, which I think most people agree that it's Coco and Penny. There's the opinion of Swiggins being in there, but here's been around.
Here's my thing with Swiggins. He's a counter for those top tier characters, so people will group him in the top tier with it. So a lot of people complain about Swiggins being, oh, he's overpowered. He is one of the only counters to such fast characters. Now, this is obviously my opinion. It's not set in stone, so you can yell at me and tell me I'm wrong all you want, but I think that Swiggins is not a top-tier character. He's a counter to Coco Penny.
Very true. But just as a recap, we've talked about Coco and Penny, and then we transitioned into our opinions of the lowest knots, which Voltar, Derpl, and Ayla for Devmon. Derpl and Ayla for myself, and Ayla and Yuri for Oz. But sadly, we are running out of time. So I just wanted to say goodbye from myself, and a huge thank you to the graphics artist that worked on the overlays, as well as everyone that helped out with making this cast. Correct me if I'm wrong. I want to say thank you to Zami for making the overlays and Vixie for making the logos and everything else. What else did she make, Oz?
She was doing the logos, and she's continuing on doing a few more things for us in the future. So a huge thank you to those guys, and
yeah, definitely. So we'll go in order: myself, then Oz, then Devmon. Thanks for listening. Always great to have you guys. I'm enjoying this cast as much as ever. See ya.
It's been awesome doing this for 2 weeks in a row now. I know Nada wishes he could be here to give us that discerning look on his face that, oh, what are you guys doing? You guys are doing this all wrong. But unfortunately, he cannot be here. Exactly, that look. No, I'm just kidding. But I do want to say a huge thank you for listening in, and a huge thank you to all the artists who worked on this so far. And we'll see you guys next time. Hopefully with Nada.
And I'd just like to say thank you to very much. Also, thank you to Nikki and Ant for submitting the questions on the forums. I've been Devmon, and I'm still alive.